Indianapolis Colts fans, I do not know about you, but it feels like the anticipation for this season has reached a boiling point as we finally approach the end of this quiet offseason. Some major updates just dropped regarding our training camp schedule and the status of some key players that could really change the outlook for the franchise. The stakes feel incredibly high this year, with so many moving parts across the roster. The more these details emerge, the harder it is to ignore what is happening behind the scenes. Smash that like button, subscribe, and tell me your name and city. Let us dive in. The quietest stretch of the NFL calendar finally ends July 29th when our Indianapolis Colts report to Grand Park for a training camp that could define our immediate future, with the biggest focus squarely on veteran quarterback Daniel Jones and his recovery from a torn Achilles. Jones arrived in Indianapolis as a high-stakes investment meant to stabilize our offense, and after an impressive season that was tragically cut short on December 7th, we handed him a massive 2-year, $88 million contract to keep him as our centerpiece. And honestly, seeing him progress from simple throwing drills to full 7-on-7 minicamp work has been the only thing keeping our spirits high during this long offseason. The team officially announced that veterans report July 28th, and it is confirmed that Jones is on schedule for a full workload, though we are all holding our breath to see how he handles live contact in the pocket for the first time since the injury. Here is where it gets interesting, because while the coaching staff remains optimistic, any setback in his mobility would turn our season upside down immediately. That matters because the organization clearly built this roster around his return, and the potential of a lingering issue creates massive anxiety for us as Indianapolis Colts fans. Let's be real, this news hit us hard because we have seen promising campaigns derailed by quarterback instability before and after. Witnessing the heartbreak of his injury last winter, we are desperate for stability. Now here is the thing, we are also bracing for the final camp in Westfield before the move to the facility in Indy, adding a bittersweet layer to these workouts. As Indianapolis Colts fans, we find ourselves at this crossroads because of an aggressive all-in roster strategy that prioritized veteran stability over long-term depth. When the front office signed Daniel Jones to that massive 2-year, $88 million deal, they were betting that his career-best season prior to the December 7th Achilles tear was his new baseline. That matters because the organization is essentially leveraging our entire 2026 campaign on the medical clearance of one player. Historically, this team has struggled when banking on high-priced recovery projects, much like the Carson Wentz gamble that ultimately failed to deliver postseason success. Behind closed doors, Shane Steichen and the front office are likely terrified of a setback, knowing full well that Riley Leonard represents an unproven commodity despite his poise in the season finale. Let's be real, the decision to keep Anthony Richardson on the roster through the start of camp is purely a calculated financial maneuver to bypass early roster bonuses, while waiting for a desperate team to bite on a trade after a predictable training camp quarterback injury elsewhere. Here is where it gets interesting because the coaching staff knows that if Richardson shows flashes of brilliance, the locker room chemistry could become complicated fast. And honestly, watching a former 4th overall pick fight for a roster spot while knowing his trade request is still hanging over the facility is a bizarre distraction we simply do not need. Now here is the thing, the team is simultaneously trying to overhaul a unit that lost core leaders like Zaire Franklin and Kenny Moore too, creating a leadership void that cannot be coached away. We are watching a high-stakes management experiment unfold in real time at Grand Park, and the pressure on everyone from the GM to the backup signal caller is reaching a boiling point. Let's go Colts! This is the most critical training camp in recent memory because we are watching a complete identity shift unfold at Grand Park. That matters because the health of Daniel Jones and the uncertainty surrounding Anthony Richardson creates a massive volatility index for our quarterback room. If Jones struggles with his mobility, the entire offensive scheme under Shane Steichen faces an immediate overhaul that could jeopardize our explosive potential. And honestly, the roster turnover is just as jarring. With 5 veteran starters gone, we are essentially banking on a youth movement to plug holes across the trenches and the secondary. This change immediately impacts our salary cap flexibility and forces young talents like Jalen Travis and Justin Wally to grow up overnight. If these replacements falter during our early joint practices against Mike Vrabel's disciplined New England squad, we could be staring at a major personnel hole before the calendar even turns to September. Here is where it gets interesting regarding our division outlook. While the Tennessee Titans are undergoing a total transformation under Robert Saleh and Mike Borgonzi, our ability to secure a playoff spot hinges on how quickly our defense gels. Let's be real, we cannot afford to drop early division games while we are still tinkering with our secondary alignment. If we do not generate consistent pressure off the edge during these preseason matchups against Atlanta and Detroit, our secondary will be exposed by high-octane offenses. Now here's the thing, this team has enough raw talent to compete for a postseason berth, but only if the locker room transitions seamlessly through this final summer in Westfield. We need these young pieces to prove they belong on the field immediately because the margin for error in this conference is razor thin. As Indianapolis Colts fans, we have to stay loud and support the growth. Let's go Colts! On one side, holding on to Anthony Richardson provides us with the ultimate insurance policy. If Daniel Jones struggles with his recovery or hits a setback, having an explosive, high-upside talent like Richardson on the bench is a luxury most teams would kill for, especially with the trade market for signal callers being so volatile during the preseason. But on the other side, the risk of a locker room distraction is palpable. Given that he already requested a trade, his continued presence might undermine team chemistry if he feels disgruntled about his backup status, and we could be missing out on valuable assets that would help fill the holes left by our departed veteran starters. Media pundits across the league, including analysts covering the rise of coaches like Ben Johnson in Chicago or Mike Vrabel in New England, suggest that teams are waiting for a desperate starter to go down in August before making a serious offer for Richardson. That matters because the waiting game is a dangerous gamble that could leave us with nothing if his value dips further. Here is where it gets interesting, as insiders are reporting that teams like the Titans under Robert Saleh are keeping a close eye on our quarterback room as they look to solidify their own roster. Let's be real, keeping a former top 5 pick as a backup is almost never sustainable in today's NFL environment. Personally, I think it is time to rip the Band-Aid off. If we can secure a solid draft haul, we should move him before the roster bonus kicks in, allowing us to fully commit to the leadership of Jones and the development of Riley Leonard. Holding on to a player who wants out simply creates unnecessary noise during a transitional year. As we prepare for our final summer at Grand Park, it is clear that this training camp is the ultimate litmus test for the direction of this franchise over the next few seasons. We are witnessing a massive transition where the veteran identity of the past is giving way to a younger, unproven core that must prove they can sustain our competitive standards. And honestly, this feels like a pivotal crossroads because if Daniel Jones returns to form and our younger replacements step up, we remain a legitimate playoff threat in a tough AFC. Here is where it gets interesting because we should feel cautiously optimistic heading into September. We have a coaching staff that maximizes talent, and the influx of fresh faces brings a hunger that could surprise the rest of the league. That matters because consistency in coaching usually bridges the gap during periods of high roster turnover. Let's be real, the cloud of uncertainty surrounding Anthony Richardson is difficult, but it creates a clearer focus for the guys who are committed to the immediate mission. Now here's the thing, the success of this season hinges on whether these new starters can handle the pressure of the NFL spotlight during those high-stakes joint practices. We are essentially watching the foundation of the 2027 Colts being poured right in front of our eyes this August. With so many variables in play, I want to know your take on the biggest story of the summer. Which of the 5 rookie or new starters are you most excited to see win a permanent job in the starting lineup this August? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Let's go Colts! I'll see you in the next one.